the first thing they'd ask sometimes is, okay, well, can I get a referral to a private lawyer? Because the assumption is that's the only shot that I got. And I really feel like public defender's offices could do everything they can to have a new slick marketing image or what have you. But the people that really have voice that others are going to listen to are other family members. And so when that person would come in and say, oh, I don't have a lawyer, I have a public defender, which is a common phrase, right? They would say, well, Blanca would say, oh, I work with a public defender. They actually got Rudy home, which is true. They actually got the case dismissed. And my public defender worked for me night and day. Even the times where you weren't talking to him, I knew that he was there. And that's the office that I know gives your loved one the best shot. And so the perception of public defenders and the relationship with the community and the partnership change based on the lived experiences, the honest, real lived experiences of families there. And that changed what the public defenders could do too. And we're going to talk about some of that stuff down the road. One of you want to talk through the kind of principles? Or you want to do this? Yeah. So we're going to, so that was San Jose, but we're going to take it.
So in Knoxville, Mark, which is the head public defender there, he brought debug to the city. They had an open training for the community, so anyone was welcome. There was a 2-day training, and I'm sorry, I have a cold, so. And after the training, they asked, would we be interested in having a hub there? So it was about 10 people who were interested, but we all were from different organizations. So we just came together collectively and formed one organization, and that's now Community Defense of East Tennessee. We've been doing participatory defense for about 3.5 years. Even though Mark brung them there, we still have, we're still trying to form that relationship with the public defender's office. Some of them love us, some of them kind of walk the other way when they see us. But they do see the work that we're doing, and they know that we can do and say things that they can't. So they're starting to, I get calls, hey, I have a video, can y'all put that out there? So we can show how the police have brutalized people in our community. They don't want to show it, but this man, it's his property, so contact him. So we're kind of working that way now, and we're seeing a difference as far as like sentencing in the community.
Good morning. So the way it happened for us was Debug came to like a symposium at one of our colleges, and Keir Bradford Gray, who was our chief public defender at the time, was there. We're not an organizing agency, we're a community action agency. So here, I think I looked it up, and it's Gulf Coast Community Services Association, I think. It's similar to what we do. So we just basically support the families and provide service. So when we have a fatherhood program, which is for re-entry, which we were already involved in some court system some way. So when she approached us, I wasn't at the symposium, but our Mr. Herb Morris, who was our program director of that program, was there, and he was like, mind you, I was his supervisor at the time, we're going to do this. So he was really adamant of getting it done, and so we became like the second, so we're like the baby, I guess the older, was the baby, now we're the older. So we're like the triple OGs now. So going from second and see how the movement was, but the public defender's office we were already kind of familiar with, but we're on the other side where it's like, all right, help us. We got to help these people. So when she came to us and said, we have 15,000 cases, 30 public defenders, and 4 investigators, and I was like, why wouldn't I want to do this? So the relationship with our public defender's office, even now, because she's moved on to Philadelphia, their chief public defender. We have Dean Beer now, who is our chief public defender now, is on board. So it's a great relationship. And I, thank what you do for, to protect our people.
Yeah, so we have just some framing language around what the principles are. So we usually share this with the community organization, but I thought it was important for you all to see what it is too. So one is that family and community strength can play a pivotal role in stopping and reducing incarceration for a loved one and community. In a lot of spaces, that's actually met with skepticism, just because of the presumption of who can do what and who has the power and who doesn't. The second one is that families and communities can be even more powerful in taking the role of organizer and agent of change rather than service recipient. Again, that was sort of something that we thought we had to articulate, because the point of reference that most people have is not that they, as someone's family, can be a determining factor on whether someone's locked up or not. And so, like, we hear it all the time. We still hear it. We've been doing this in San Jose for probably 11 years now. We still hear it where someone comes in, and usually, like, how it works in San Jose is, like, we've never done a flyer or anything like that. It's word of mouth, and it's usually word of mouth from, like, jail visits. So someone's doing a jail visit, and people tend to have the same kind of schedules too. So they'll be doing a jail visit, and then they'll meet another family that's visiting their loved one, and they'll say, hey, why don't you come to debug on Thursday? We got this weekly meeting, right? You know, they're not like, there's participatory defense and mass incarceration. You know, they're just like, it's a support meeting. And so people would come to the meeting, and the first thing they would say sometimes is, okay, well, which one's the lawyer? Because the assumption is that there has to be some magical lawyer there that they're going to be able to just feed their questions to, get them all the answers, and then their loved one comes home. And so it's a bit of a process to say, actually, you know, you likely already have a lawyer, public defender. This is about you trying to supplement that work in some particular way. And then the other one is about how working on individual cases and communities can build the movement of directly impacted people to hold the actors court accountable, make systemic change, and ultimately end mass incarceration. And so that was so that it's not just individual cases, but there could be actual policy changes and campaigns and kind of larger, broader strokes that could make it so we're moving in the direction of ending incarceration. So it's not just individual cases one by one, week by week. And so some stuff like the community wouldn't be seeing if we weren't like looking under the hood of the courts the way that participatory defense allows us to do. Like, for example, just yesterday, we were talking with the folks at TOP. We had about 25 people there, and we were talking about, you know, how to hold court actors accountable, how to get outcomes. And these are black belts in that work. You know, they got judges elected, and we've never done anything like that. And, you know, so, like, we look to them with a lot of reverence. And they're talking about, like, court-appointed lawyers and, you know, what you do. So we're saying, like, well, what if TOP had some role in sort of the decision-making of who is on that list that would be court-appointed, or had some standard that they could say, here's what we think the community would want. We wouldn't be seeing those things or even know that that was a possibility if the community wasn't looking to see where they could flex community power. So can you read the top line? I'm just kidding. You can't read the top line. I was just, so this is this is really just I wanted to show the imagery, not so much the language. We spent a good, I don't know, 2 hours or maybe something on this yesterday, where we did zoom in on the language and the bullets. But this is like a piece from our training material. So, but what you're seeing is a sort of skeleton of a felony court case. This is in California. So the gray boxes just describe what the kind of procedural stages are. So it's like, for us, it's arrest, arraignment, early resolution calendar is kind of like where a lot of the pleas happen. A formal plea, preliminary hearing or probable cause hearing. You get rearranged trial, sentencing, that sort of thing. And so we show this to the community organizations. One is because a lot of people don't even know necessarily what the process is or the duration that it would take and that sort of thing. But then secondly, what we say is, look, the lawyer's work is in those gray boxes. They're you know, that's why you see them and they're standing up and they're speaking and they're filing motions and they're you know, sitting with your loved one, and that's them saying things at arraignment or in these hearings or at a probable cause hearing or, you know, when a grand jury, that kind of thing. But what most people's experience is their loved one gets arrested or someone they care about gets arrested, and then they're kind of just sitting and waiting and hoping and praying that the system spits them out somewhere along that railroad with the least damage done. That's sort of it. Like you sort of, loved one gets arrested and you say, okay, well, let's see what happens. Maybe you show up at court, maybe you don't even know what they're talking about, but you're showing up there for moral support. And then people get kicked out and you just say, okay, let's see if we can reconstruct our lives. That's sort of the common story of incarceration. Very few people, as you know, make it down the road to something like a trial. And so usually people get kicked out a little earlier. What we say in the participatory defense training, like so what we talked about with TOP is like, we'll show those gray boxes and then we'll flash we'll flash up these green bubbles to say, yeah, the lawyer's work is in those gray boxes, but there are things you as a community could do in between those stages could have an impact on the trajectory of what happens with this case, to see if a next gray box even appears, or if it does, what the kind of station or disposition it is that it appears in. So like what we did yesterday is we went through, like, so before arraignment, here are material that you could gather if you know information. You know, try to write down the names of potential witnesses so you could get it to the defense investigator as soon as possible. If you know where there may be like surveillance camera information, get it to the investigator as soon as possible. You know, not that they're becoming an investigator, you know, not that they're like at the crime scene, like with their magnifying glass, you know, like, but just to preserve this stuff so that way by the time you're even thinking about like defense strategies or whatever, something's there, or the police haven't changed what the testimony is of the person. But then even outside of just kind of defense preparation, just gathering stuff that could be helpful for the attorney, one, to know who their client is, but then two, how to best navigate and advocate for them. So I brought a couple what we call social biography packets, but families gather, you know, letters and photos and certificates that say who the person is, what's at stake as a result of their detention, who else would be hurt and injured, and getting that stuff to the attorney early on. And so just this notion that there are things that you could do is a major switch in the position of how people respond or react to the experience that they're in. And so what we did, and this goes all the way down to trial, to the appeal, sentencing, and parole. So we have I learned this morning how to pop up new bubbles. So we had a couple examples we just wanted to share. Because what we did yesterday is we said, okay, here's like kind of what the steps are, but let me tell you how the steps have actually resulted in freedom in these various people. And we kind of talked through different stories. But I put up a couple of Sabir and William on if you all want to talk about.
Okay. So Sabir is the son of, I guess I always call her my lead facilitator, but she's also our resource development in our agency. So Sabir was, I think he had assault, he had some charges, like totally forget, but he was on the run. So we were like, all right, Sabir, come on, you gotta, you know, let's get this done, take care of what you need to take care of. Sabir was early 20s at the time. So he did that. So I think he came in at the prelim. So since Heather already knew the process of what we need to do, we automatically started gathering stuff once we knew that we were gonna have to go through this process. So getting his letters, he had worked for our agency before, he was working already, community, relationships, had volunteered. So we gathered all that stuff. So what it did was at the prelim for him, helped to decrease the charges, also to get him into like a program at the state prison where it would lessen his time. So he would do 1 year and then like a year and a half of some rehabilitation. I can't think of the name of the program, but it was like for, I guess, up until the age 24, I guess you could do this program. So he was looking at, what is that, 18? I know. So time saved, so he was probably looking at 20, because I think he did like 2.5. So I think he was looking at 20, so his time saved was 18 years with the help of what we were able to do with helping the public defender show exactly who Sabir was based on the work. And, he's just not this number that you see. He's somebody's son, somebody's uncle, somebody's brother.
So one of the reasons I love this process is that it can happen from arrest all the way to parole. So William is actually my brother, and he was already serving time. He had a parole hearing coming up. So we decided to do a virtual social bio packet, which he has one here. What we did was I went around to different organizations that could provide wraparound support when he got home, got letters from them, got letters from Debug, got letters from other people. He had a job lined up, got that letter. I was actually about to have a major surgery probably the next month. So when I went to the doctor, he said, "Who's going to be your caregiver?" And I said, "Can you put my brother's name on there?" I was like, "He's in prison, but I'm going to his parole hearing, so hopefully they'll let him out to be my caregiver." So my doctor put his name on that letter. We also contacted the parole, I forgot her name. She's inside the prison. So she was directing us on, getting all his certificates. He had been in there doing programming. He was leading programming for other people in there. So she gathered all of that for us. We had to fax it in to make sure everyone in the parole board had that information. I actually went to the hearing as well to speak on his behalf. They received the information, and he was granted parole, and he was released a year and a half early. So this process can, like I said, work from the beginning to the end. So
we passed out a couple examples of social bio packets, and I think one's Alan that we used early on for a bail hearing. So the way in California